Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a brief history of the evolution of the horror film genre. My name is Anthony Elder, and I'll be your host for the next 4 minutes. The genre of horror has existed long before film was invented, and in Western literature, it began to become prevalent in the 18th century. Many people credit Horace Walpole with founding horror as a legitimate literary genre with his story Castle of Otranto. The horror genre in film was heavily influenced by Georges Méliès, who in 1896 released what is known today as the very first horror-themed film, Les Mémoires du Diable, or as it's known in the United States, The Haunted Castle. The horror elements of this short 3-minute film include a fake flying bat, in which transforms into the demon Mephistopheles, and realistic ghosts. Now, by today's standards, this film wouldn't be seen as very frightening at all, but for the time that it was released in, it was the most frightening thing anyone could witness on screen. Méliès and this exact film are what helped filmmakers enter the golden age of horror in the 1920s and 1930s. Many films during this time period, such as the German Expressionist films of the early 20s like The Golem and Nosferatu, were the most popular horror films of the silent era and paved way for the universal horror greats such as Dracula, Frankenstein, and Paramount's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which were the first horror films of the talkie era. The New York Film Academy states that before 1930, instead of calling them horror films, they were described as romantic melodrama with a dark element, and that the 1930s marked the first time in the industry that the word horror was used to describe the genre. From here, the horror genre blossomed in a very successful manner. Once we entered the 1940s, actors such as Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi, and Boris Karloff became synonymous with the horror genre for many years to come. Today, these actors and their films are still looked at with much fondness and are even considered kings, if you will, of the horror genre as a whole. Once we reached the 1950s, audiences wanted horror films that connected with them personally and terrified them psychologically. Films such as Rear Window and most famously Psycho, in which never relied on ghouls and goblins to scare the audience. On the contrary, they not only used psychology to strike fear into the hearts of the viewers, but they also opened new pathways to the horror genre in the years to come. Once we reached the 70s and 80s, the subject of demonic possession and the occult had taken over the horror film genre by storm, and some film critics declared that this could even be the best period ever for horror. Many of the films that released during this period are seen today as some of the greatest paranormal films of all time, such as The Exorcist, which was a groundbreaking film for its time, and the Amityville Horror. From there, the horror genre expanded an even greater amount, bringing forth the ever-present and successful slasher genre. This was the era in which Saw was family, teenagers feared sleep, and Halloween was the one day a year where the Haddonfield Boogeyman was more alive than ever. Throughout the 2000s and even today, horror films have been more prevalent than ever, offering fans of the genre a plethora of films to enjoy, whether it be a zombie film, torture porn such as Saw, or even films such as The Conjuring. Horror is thankfully here to stay, and I don't know about you, but I know someone who sure is happy about it.
Nosferatu!